Chapter 18. The Daughter. Time blurred in the dim hush of Barrendark's oscillating twilight. The churn came marked by heat, rather than light, Sorath's beacon swelling out of the wither blaze to the east, pressing warmth across the sand until the air tasted of it. Then the veil would reassert itself, the Nightshawl bleeding back in from the west, and the temperature dropped as abruptly as a slammed door. Back and forth it would go. The enclave was sheltered in a narrow valley carved between a pair of grand rock formations. Their steep faces held back both cursed realms, while the wards woven into the valley's ends protected against whatever the stone could not. Eira wandered to the outskirts of Barrendark, sitting on a small stone outcrop just within the boundary of the ward line. The churn was waning. To the east, the orange press of Sorath's beacon had dimmed to a low smolder along the horizon, and the Nightshawl was roiling in to reclaim its ground. Dew had begun to bead on the rocks nearby, each drop catching what little light remained before the darkness would inevitably swallow it. When they arrived 4 churns ago, Kai had been unconscious. Eira stayed at his bedside for most of that time, watching for signs that something deeper might have broken inside him. Luckily, nothing had. Myr'ides had asked her to step out and sat with Kai until he stirred on that first day. Eira had lingered just beyond the threshold, catching the low murmur of their exchange through the door. She couldn't make out the words, but it didn't matter. For the first time in longer than she could place, there was nothing that required her attention. No threat to track, no blade to draw. Since then, her hands had been empty, and she had no idea what to do with them. So she came out here instead, sat, and threw stones into the roil beyond the ward line. And her thoughts, stripped of anything useful to do, turned, as they inevitably did, to the woman she had called Mother. Mother had taken her in, raised her, trained her, but she also realized quite early on that Mother had never loved her. The memories came in pieces. Some were dull and easier to push aside. Others surfaced sharp and sudden, Mother's voice speaking to her not as a child but as raw material. The lessons almost always ended in pain. Mother had woven suffering into everything because pain, she'd said, was the only path to real power, not the way of the rune runners who dabbled in the dust of gods long dead. Eira believed her, too. For cycles, she'd believed her. Eira thought the wounds would make her stronger, and the constant breaking and reforging of her soul was necessary. She believed Mother had done it because she saw Eira as someone worth cultivating. She hadn't. Mother never wanted her strong. She wanted her to be useful. Like a blade to be sharpened, honed not through care, but through calculated cruelty. Mother. Why bother calling her by that honorable title any longer? Vylthera had never been her mother. Eira had always known that. But what she hadn't understood, until now, was how little knowing matters when the lie becomes the pillar that holds up your fragile house. You only learn of your mistake when you try to build one way or the other. Heat pricked behind her eyes, but she blinked it back. She wouldn't cry over Mother, over Vylthera, nor would she mourn the cycle stolen from her. But the absence of a mother's love left a deeply hollow grief in its place, pressing against her ribs. She remembered before, too. Not much. Only brief flashes of warmth, safety, and of a name that had meant something once. She had known herself back then. She was a different person. But the torment had worn that girl away in increments she hadn't noticed until almost nothing remained. She had wanted, for a long time now, to find her way back to whoever that girl had been. She just didn't know the path, and she wasn't certain one existed. And if it did, what would she do when she got there again? Somewhere in this enclave, breathing the same thin air, eating at the same fire, was a person Kai called Mother. Korik brought her through the ward line in the last veil. Eira kept her distance, finding reasons to be elsewhere. She was only delaying the inevitable. She knew that. But what do you say to a woman who buried you? How do you stand in front of someone who spent cycles carrying the burden of your death on her back and tell her it wasn't so? That the child she lost was alive, just twisted into someone else wholly unrecognizable, into a freak, into a monster. Because Eira was indeed no longer the girl she once was. Not in her face, not in the color of her eyes, not in anything as deep as the grain of her soul. She was Eira, the witchling. The girl Ryn mourned had a different name entirely. Nia. That was the truth she couldn't escape. Ryn might look at her and see nothing of a daughter she remembered. She might see only the damage Velthera had done. The tattoos, the conditioning, the scars, and the blood on Eira's hands from cycles spent under the Night Coven's control. What if Ryn couldn't see past all that damage? What if all she saw was the broken reflection of a daughter she had lost? Eira was suddenly aware of a chill in the air. Her skin prickled. She faced witches and horrors all across Denetta and survived them. Things that should have outright killed her, and still she persevered. But this, Ryn's horror and disappointment frightened her more than any claim or hunt. There would be no taking anything back if coming clean about her past went sour. There would be no undoing it, and she'd have to live with that if it did. She deserves to know, she repeated to herself. Eira sat with her back against a boulder, arms resting on her knees. She had fought so hard against Velthera's intentions to be a person on the side of good, like Kai and Korik. That person would be someone Ryn might recognize and forgive. But now that the moment had come, she didn't know if it would be enough. Footsteps approached from behind and settled beside her. "Hey," Raven said. She breathed deep. "Lohara." "I'm sorry?" "Lohara. You said Raven was too on the nose. My birth name was Lohara." She scooted closer to Eira. "But a name is only as good as the people who gave it to you, and that one holds no meaning for me anymore." "Why's that?" "Why do you think?" Eira had no idea. "Because you're a shapeshifter?" "My mother and father found out what I was, and one day I woke up and found myself abandoned." Raven took one of the stones from Eira's pile and chucked it hard, tossed me to the shadows, threw me away. "You reinvented yourself. I can respect that." Raven shrugged. Names should mean something, shouldn't they? Lohara was just a word someone else gave me. Raven is who I am, and what I am. I found it the same way I found my second skin. Alone. Somewhere in the scrub beyond the ward line, crickets chirped against the encroaching dark. "Did I tell you about my first shift?" Raven asked. "No." Eira turned to face her, pulling her knees to her chest. "Tell me." "I was maybe 8 or 9, playing outside my father's hut while he worked down at the dock." Raven's gaze drifted ahead. I didn't understand what was happening. My bones prickled. Then they compressed, like my body was folding in on itself. One moment I was standing on solid ground, and the next I was weightless. The Nightshawl stretched out below me. Colors. Colors I never noticed before. Every sense sharpened until the world felt too big and too detailed all at once, as if the dark had simply thinned. She turned a stone over in her palm without looking at it. The wind caught me before I even realized I had wings. "So, no one taught you?" It just happened, said Eira. Took me hours to figure out how to land. The corner of her mouth lifted, brief and dry. By the time I shifted back, it was well into the Vale. I snuck back in. My father beat me with a switch for going missing and making my mother worry. Eira said nothing, but thought of her times with Myr'ides. So, I kept it to myself. Learned to do it reflexively, quietly, without anyone knowing. By the time I truly understood what I was, even before they figured it out and left me to die, I'd already been Raven for cycles, not Lohara. Eira nodded slowly. But why tell me? You think I don't see you? Raven turned to meet her eyes. You've been trying to fit into a name that hasn't suited you since you were a child. Let it go. Own who you are now, Eira. That's the truth, and your mother will only accept the truth. How could you possibly know that? There's a reason Korik trusts me to watch people. I see what's beneath the surface. You can't hide. She leaned forward, closer to Eira. Not from me. Eira ran her fingers through her hair in frustration. Myr'n mourns Nia. How can I know she'll accept me? You can't. A smile crossed her face before she sat facing the ward boundary again. But Korik is as close to a father as I'll ever have. They're good people. Passionate people. A strong-knit family. So, when you decide to have that conversation with your mother, I imagine a far better outcome for you than for me. She rubbed her nose. At least your mother won't try to kill you. Eira hooted. She might, though. Eira, you've already survived the worst of what they've all done to you. This is how you start healing. Whatever happens, you'll be standing when it's over. And, for better or worse, at least that's one less wound on your soul. They sat there for a very long time before Eira spoke again. Are you going to tell Kai? I'm not telling a soul. That's your truth to tell, not mine. Thank you. Later in the Vale, after the communal dinner, Eira found Myr'n just beyond the gathering hall, standing near the glow of a lantern. Through the walls, voices and laughter still spilled out into the dark. But out here, it was just the two of them and the quiet. Eira's hands curled into fists at her sides, then slowly released. It was now or never. Myr'n? The woman turned and said, Hello, Eira. She waited without offering anything to fill the silence that followed. We need to talk. Myr'n looked her over in an unhurried fashion, then nodded. All right. Eira gestured toward a nearby bench. Let's sit. Myr'n crossed to it and sat, smoothing her skirts as she did. Eira followed, perching beside her with less composure than she meant to show. Once Eira settled, Myr'n turned fully toward her, hands resting loosely in her lap. What do you want to talk about? Eira had spent the evening preparing for this moment, testing words in her mind, imagining how they might land. But now that she sat here, every sentence unraveled before it could form. She exhaled sharply. There's something I need to tell you. Myr'n's face remained unreadable, but Eira caught the subtle shift. Her breathing slowed, with intent, careful and measured, as though she were preparing to receive a blow rather than words. Eira recognized it at once, resolve, masked as calm in the face of fear. Yes, she feared this. You've experienced a terrible loss. Many in my lifetime, dear. Your daughter. Myr'n nodded. Nia, yes. Eira stumbled over her words. She stopped. I know what happened to her. I saw it all. and I think it's important that you should know the details. Myr'ides' fingers curled slightly in her lap. Go ahead. She had begun to show signs, Eira said carefully. And a child who can call on Prismir to the coven is like an ember in the dark. She paused. That's why they came for her. Myr'ides lowered her head. We always suspected it. I remember the night they took her, Eira continued. The shadows in the woods were hide-behinds, and they had long, grotesque arms and fingers. She shuddered. They dragged Nia into the darkness before she could scream. She thought she would die. She wanted to. But death didn't come that churn, nor the veil after. Myr'ides' jaw tightened. They took her inside the Black Sentinel. I don't know where exactly. A void. A place where time unraveled and where nothing existed except the spells and their hands pulling Nia's soul apart. Her voice cracked. They remade her, Myr'ides. Burned away everything she was, and tattooed their dark ritual onto her skin, wove their magic into her bones, and twisted her mind until she couldn't tell good from evil. Eira's fingers ghosted over her arms. I don't know how long she was with them. Time didn't work the same way there. Some days she drowned in agony, and others she felt nothing at all. Eira paused. After their torment was over, they gave her a new name. And that name was Eira. Myr'ides drew a sharp breath. What? On my honor, it's true. But the worst part is, I believed them. I became Eira. She squeezed her eyes shut. But I never forgot who I was beneath. The memories were hard to hold on to, but deep down I never forgot Nia. Or you. Myr'ides' hands trembled where they pressed against her mouth. Is it true? It can't be. Is it really you? It's me. Eira wrapped her arms around herself. I remember you and Father reading The Age of Myr to me before tucking me into bed at night. I remember Kai's little annoyances. Father taking me on my first hunt in Darknest. And you, teaching me to cast the nets properly and bring back fish. All of those things. Myr'ides' hands lowered. Her jaw was slack. Her fingers twitched in small, uncertain movements. Eira read it as revulsion. Of course, it was always going to be this way. Anyway, I don't expect anything, she said, already rising. I just needed you to know. She had said what she came to say. That had to be enough. But before Eira could turn to take a step, Myr'ides' hand shot out and caught her wrist. Please, wait, Myr'ides said, also rising from the bench. You're alive. Eira swallowed. I am. Myr'ides' breath shuddered. Tears spilled down her cheeks, silent at first, then accompanied by a choked sound she couldn't suppress. You survived the Shadow's grasp. Eira wasn't sure how to answer. Words felt insufficient for everything that had been lost, and for everything she had become. She merely dipped her head in acknowledgement. Myr'ides' composure shattered completely. A sob tore free, and she covered her face with both hands, shoulders shaking. Cycles of grief holding on to hope where there was none, poured out of her all at once. Eira stood, immobilized, watching her real mother break. Myr'ides lowered her hands after several deep sobs. Her face was wet, her eyes red, but she reached out anyway. Her hand hovered near Eira's cheek before finally touching it, almost cautiously, as though afraid Eira might disappear. My darling daughter, Myr'ides whispered again. Eira had imagined it all differently. Myr'id pushing her away, recoiling, or worse, looking at her with pity. That would have cut deeper than any kind of rejection. But Myr'id did none of those things. Instead, she held Eira's face in her hands with her thumbs brushing over her cheekbones, as though memorizing every detail. Eira's breath faltered. Then, Myr'id pulled her into an embrace. Eira's arms were caught at her sides, and she didn't move at first. She wasn't sure she knew how. Was she imagining this? Myr'id's hold was firm, warm, real. Not a trick of her mind or some half-formed memory from a life that had slipped away. How she imagined this moment. For so long. Something inside her splintered like ice underfoot. Before she could stop it, she was gripping Myr'id just as fiercely, her fingers twisting into the fabric of her shawl, burying her face in her mother's shoulder. And the world blurred. She couldn't remember ever crying. Not when she was taken. Not when Velthera broke her down and tortured her. Not when Myr'ides left her bloodied. Not even for father when Velthera killed him. And not even after the first time she killed a rune runner for the Night Coven. Crying was as foreign to her as breathing water. But now, with Myr'id's arms around her, everything broke free. The sobs came hard, shattering past the walls she spent a lifetime building. They stole her breath, crushed her ribs, emptied her of something that had become a central part of her. She gasped between them, struggling for air, but it didn't matter. In fact, nothing mattered except the warmth of Myr'id's embrace and the steady grip of her hand against the back of her head. "It's all right," Myr'id murmured, her voice thick with tears. "You're here, and we're united again." When Eira's breathing finally steadied, she stepped back. Myr'id's hands lingered for a moment before falling away. Then, softly, Myr'id asked, "Does Kai know?" Eira looked away, wiping her face. "No." Myr'id's brow furrowed. "You didn't tell him?" Eira shook her head. "I was too afraid." "You'll have to tell him eventually." "I know. Eventually," Eira echoed. And she thought, "But not now." "Why didn't you come back to me sooner?" Eira lowered her gaze. That was a question, wasn't it? The one that came with unbearable memories of pain. I couldn't." Myr'id waited for more. "They took everything. Not just my eyes, my features, and my skin. Things far deeper than that." Her hand pressed flat against her chest. "I don't even feel like the same person in my soul. I thought if I came back, I was certain you'd look at me and see only Velthera's construction. Everything I'd been." She stopped. "And," she thought, "that you wouldn't want what was left of this person." Myr'id relented against the silence. "Oh, Eira." "I was one of them," Eira said. "They made me do horrid, evil things. I'm not proud of what I've done. I've tried to make it right. With the crystal, I saw my chance to escape." A long pause. Then Myr'id asked, "Are you still one of them?" Eira looked up. No, I'm not." Myr'id's gaze softened. "Then that's what matters." It was Eira's turn to ask a question. "Did you look for me?" "Oh yes. We searched for many churns and many cycles, but there was no trail." Myr'id dabbed at her eyes. "All the townsfolk told me and your father to give up and accept your death." Her throat bobbed. "But I didn't. I never stopped believing in you." Eira's eyes desperately darted around Myr'id's face and saw that she was telling the truth. Her mother spent her life never giving up on hope. Not even when father threw his away. "What do you see when you look at me?" Myr'id asked. Eira's stomach twisted. She didn't really know how to answer. A mother, a stranger, a ghost of a memory that should have been hers but wasn't. "I don't know," she admitted. Myr'n nodded, and her expression told Eira that she understood she needed time to process. That, for now, uncertainty itself was a satisfactory answer. Then Eira turned the question around. I see my baby girl, Nia. And I see the powerful woman, Eira. And I see they're both you. My daughter, the girl I lost, and the woman who came back to me. She reached up with her free hand, touching Eira's cheek again. You are not broken. You're here. You're alive. And you are mine. Eira's voice was a whisper. Even after everything. Especially after everything. Her voice went deep and unshakable. And I will never stop loving you. Not for one moment. Not ever.